We've all experienced a neighbor that we don't get along with, but we don't expect it to end in gunfire. That's exactly what happened on June 2nd, 2023. Cops responded to reports of a shooting in a neighborhood in Ocala, Florida. This was not a random shooting. The incident was preceded by years of arguments and cop calls. 35-year-old Ajike A.J. Owens was a mother of 4 living in Ocala, Florida. Friends and family described her as devoted to her children, protective, and deeply involved in her community. She lived in a neighborhood where kids would play until sunset, and most neighbors were okay with that. However, one neighbor was not. Susan Lorincz was a quiet neighbor who worked from home selling insurance. She placed no trespassing lines in her yard, creating an uninviting environment. Kids in the neighborhood, however, generally ignored those signs and played in her yard. Lorincz frequently complained about children playing in a grassy area near her yard. Sheriff records showed multiple calls involving disputes between the neighbors. Witnesses later reported that Lorincz often argued with Owens' children and had a history of hostile interactions. Everything came to a head on the night of June 2nd, 2023. That evening, Owens' children were outside playing when an argument broke out. Investigators say that Lorincz threw a roller skate that struck Owens' 10-year-old son and allegedly swung an umbrella at other children. Upset by what had happened, Owen walked to Lorinc's house and confronted her. What happened next would shock the nation. Owens approached the front door and knocked repeatedly, demanding that Lorincz come outside. The door remained closed and locked. Then, without opening it, Lorincz fired a single gunshot through the door. The bullet struck Owens in the chest while her young son stood behind her. Neighbors heard the gunshot and rushed outside. One witness recalled hearing the child scream, "They shot my mama." Emergency responders arrived quickly, but Owens' injuries were catastrophic. She was transported to a local hospital where she was pronounced dead. In the aftermath of the event, questions swirled around Florida's controversial Stand Your Ground law. Lorincz claimed she feared for her own safety and acted in self-defense. However, investigators found no evidence that Owens had attempted to force her way into the house. Authorities ultimately concluded that the shooting was not justified under Florida's law. Public outcry grew rapidly. Civil rights leaders, community activists, and Owens' family demanded justice. The case drew national attention, not only because of the circumstances surrounding the shooting, but also the allegations surfaced that Lorincz had previously used racial slurs towards Owens' children. 4 days after the shooting, Lorincz was arrested and charged with manslaughter with a firearm, along with other related charges. The legal battle that followed would last more than a year. During the trial, prosecutors argued that Lorincz had acted with reckless disregard for human life when she fired blindly through the closed and locked door. The defense maintained that she feared an imminent threat. After hearing testimony and reviewing evidence, the jury rejected the self-defense claim. In August of 2024, Susan Lorincz was found guilty of manslaughter with a firearm. Several months later, she was sentenced to 25 years in prison. The judge cited the devastating impact the killing had on Owens' 4 children and the senselessness of the act. For the Owens family, the verdict could never replace what was lost. Today, the killing of Ajike Owens remained one of Florida's most discussed criminal cases, raising difficult questions about race, gun violence, self-defense laws, and how ordinary disputes can spiral into deadly consequences.